everyone, Kristen McDonald, registered dietitian, back to show you one of my favorite family recipes, braised red cabbage. I'm showing this to you in the month of December because my family has always made a traditional German Sauerbraten Christmas Eve dinner. Sauerbraten is kind of like pot roast, except you brine the meat in advance of cooking it for a few days, and you thicken the gravy with ginger snaps, which gives the meal a really unique flavor. Alongside it, we also make something called spätzle, which is an egg kind of noodle dumpling that's absolutely delicious with that gravy on top of it. And then this braised red cabbage. Now, the braised red cabbage is great with that meal, but it pairs well with so many other meals, and I make it for my family throughout the year as well. It tastes great with roast pork or with roast chicken. And I also love red cabbage as an ingredient in a cold salad that I hope to share with you in a future month, that recipe. So please let me know if you're interested in that whole Sauerbraten dinner recipe, because that's something I could share with you as well. Okay, first we're going to start by cutting up the red cabbage, but I recently discovered something that you may be able to find in some grocery stores that makes preparing this dish so much easier, because the most labor intensive part of making braised red cabbage is cutting up the head of red cabbage. So this is a pre-shredded bag of red cabbage. It's just about the right amount, and I find it by the salad greens, the bagged salad greens in my grocery store. So when I made some yesterday to show you what the final product looks like, I used this instead of the head of red cabbage, but today I'll show you how to cut that up. You'll need a big knife. I brought out two because sometimes this larger knife actually does a better job. But you want a medium-sized head of red cabbage. I already washed this, and the outer leaves tend to get a little droopy and beaten up. So you're just going to take off the 2 or 3 outer leaves that cover the head of cabbage. And then you're going to cut off the base to give you a flat surface to put it on to cut through the head. And I think my smaller knife is going to do the trick here today. Sometimes the size of the heads, maybe you can only get larger ones. That's the selection they have at the store. And if that's the case, you may need this bigger knife, but I'm going to put it off to the side for now. So I cut it in half using that flat base, and now I'm going to cut it in quarters. And I'll work with 1/4 at a time. And there's kind of a core running through. This one doesn't show it as well, but it kind of goes with that base that you cut off, and that is going to be a very tough part of cabbage. So you want to cut out that core and just keep it off to the side. And then once you have all of the cabbage that you're going to actually put into your dish, you're going to cut it into shreds. It doesn't have to be super fine. This is kind of your preference. When I get the pre-bagged, it's finer. When I cut it myself, it tends to be slightly thicker and longer slices of cabbage. But this dish cooks for many hours, and the cabbage softens up quite a bit. So you won't really notice the bigger pieces. They'll kind of break down anyway. So I'm going to cut up the cabbage, the other quarter here, and this one I kind of didn't cut it quite even, so the core is already missing from this one. The core tends to be white, and it has a circular look to it. So red cabbage has a similar taste to green cabbage, but it's full of vitamins and minerals that are important for your body, and also fiber, antioxidants. This rich purple color tells you that it has some great nutritional benefits. And actually this dish is slightly sweet. It has some warm flavors because I use cloves and bay leaves in it. And so my kids tend to like this. And they are a little pickier with different vegetables. Actually, when my husband and I first met, he was kind of picky with vegetables as well. So I'm just cutting out that core piece again here. And I don't know when or how I convinced him to try red cabbage, but this is now one of his favorites also. So that's another reason I chose to show you this recipe, is I try to think of things that have really worked in my world with some of my pickier eaters to get them to try new vegetables, new fruit, get more produce into their diets. Okay, so I'm gonna set that off to the side for now. I'm also going to get some butter melting in the pot that I'm gonna cook the whole dish in, so you can use one pot here, because I want to saute some diced onion and saute some diced apple. My husband is also kind of picky with onions in recipes, but again, because this cooks so long, the onion really breaks down. You don't have much of the texture, but more of the flavor. And so I don't even worry about dicing this super small for him. And he's very picky about that. So I'm gonna get these 2 tablespoons of butter melting in this pot behind me. And while that's melting, I'm gonna cut up my apple. I already diced an onion for you here, just one small onion, about this size, that I cut up into dices. Now I'm gonna take my apple and I'm going to peel it. This is not the best knife for peeling an apple, but it's the one I grabbed, so I'm gonna go with it. And if you miss a little bit of the peel, again, it's okay because it's going to break down. I like to use a cooking apple, like a Macintosh apple, for this recipe, but truly any apple you may have on hand or that you grab will do just fine. So almost have all of the peel off, and then I'm just gonna cut it in half, core it, and dice it in a similar size to the onion. And I'm doing this kind of quickly, but remember those apple cores we talked about a couple recipes ago? You could certainly get your kids helping with the apple cores. You'll want it smaller than that, but they could do the first cut for you. All right, so I've got my cores out. Just push my extra produce off to the side. And I'm gonna do something else with this other onion that's hanging out here. I'll show you in just a minute. So a quick dice of the apple. I'll add it to my bowl with the diced onion. Another way to really get kids interested in eating is traditions, like I talked about. So you may have traditions of certain cookies that you make this time of year, Christmas cookies, holiday cookies, but ever since my kids were born, we have had Sauerbraten on Christmas Eve, and it's something that they look forward to now when we talk about it, and they're starting to remember it. So I think those traditions also help get kids interested in eating healthful meals if you incorporate those into your traditions. Okay, so apple and onion here in my glass bowl. I'm going to transfer it over to the butter that has been melting. You may be able to hear a little sizzle here. And I'm just going to grab a spoon and give it a stir. There are a few little slices of red cabbage in my pan here as well, and that's okay. This is a kind of rustic dish. So while I'm working with this other onion, I'm going to just let that saute until the onions become translucent, and then we'll work on the rest. So this onion was one this is going to be different than anything you've done with another recipe. We're going to actually pierce it with cloves, and we're going to nestle it in the red cabbage. So I just cut the ends off, but I thought I would show you how to peel the onion and keep it whole. An onion is in layers, so you just want to use your knife to go through those first couple of layers and then peel the peel and maybe the next layer off. You're not going to eat this in the final product. This is purely for seasoning with spices. And then you're going to take whole cloves, not ground cloves, about 10 to 12 whole cloves. Again, this is not a perfect science. It's a rustic meal, so however many you want to use. and just pierce around the whole onion. It's a little tricky, but the cloves are pretty sharp enough to pierce the onion and durable. So I'm just gonna get through that out. Sometimes one will crumble in my hand, but haven't had that happen here yet. All right. And I hear my onion and apple sauteing behind me, and this smells delicious when it's cooking. All right, so I have about 10 to 12 in my onion. I'm gonna set that off to the side because I'm gonna use that in a little bit. And now I'm gonna season my cabbage that's hanging out here in the bowl. I'm gonna consult my recipe for this. So half a teaspoon of salt, which is not a whole lot for this whole recipe. 3 to 4 tablespoons of vinegar. That's to taste. I tend to like a little bit more vinegar, but I'm actually going to do my sugar first because I'll reuse my tablespoon and I don't want to stick a wet tablespoon into my sugar. So 1 tablespoon of sugar. If you buy red cabbage, you can buy it jarred in the canned vegetable section of the grocery store. But if you look at the ingredients list, it's going to have things like high fructose corn syrup, which is a sweetener like sugar. Here you get to control what type of sweetener you're putting in. I just like to use regular old sugar and just a small amount. A lot of sweetness comes from the apple, and actually onions are a little bit sweet as well. The best vinegar to use in this recipe is a red wine vinegar, but if you don't have that, apple cider vinegar works very well too. So 1, 2, 3, like I said, I like 4. And you just kind of let that hang out while you're working on the rest of the meal. You can give it a little toss, or the rest of the dish, I should say. Okay, so I'm gonna get back here. My onion and apple is looking great. I'll show you in a minute. Actually, it's starting to get a little brown, but that's okay. So here is the apple and onion sauteing, just like you would do with many other meals that start with some onion. You're just paring the apple, which may be a little different. Put that back on the heat. Let me look at my recipe quickly. Okay, so now I'm going to add the cabbage. Again, not a perfect science here. You just want to see those onions start to get a little translucent, maybe a little brown. I'm going to throw this right in the pot with what's cooking already. Now I'm going to throw my bay leaves in. These give a rich flavor to the meal as well. Usually these are added to dishes that cook for a couple of hours. I'm just getting pieces of bay leaves here. I want 2 whole bay leaves. 1, 2. I'm going to add them. They're very fragrant to the pot. And then I have boiled some water. You're going to take boiling water. You could do that when you get your apple and onion started. I boiled it right before I started the video here with you today. And we're just going to add 3/4 of a cup of boiling water to our cabbage, apples, and onions that are in the pot. I'm going to turn here. I just have a measuring cup, measuring 3/4 of a cup of boiling water. I'm going to put that over the cabbage mixture here that is continuing on low heat. And then I'm going to nestle my onion with cloves into that pot of cabbage. I'll show you again what that looks like. So I've kind of just put it in there with the bay leaves and with the cabbage, and it's in the middle. And you're just going to cover this. You need to grab a cover. Oh, I don't have my cover here. It's in the dishwasher. That's all right. I'm going to cover it and let it cook for about 3 hours over low heat, stirring it occasionally. And then it's ready to enjoy. This is the cabbage that I made yesterday, so I wanted to show you what the final product looks like. It really cooks down quite a bit. It gets this really rich red color, and it is absolutely delicious. So good. I really hope you try this recipe. It would accompany your Christmas dinner or other meals that you may want to try this winter season. Thank you and enjoy.